We are starting to get into election season, and we're going to go back to an interview we did in March of 2011 with Massachusetts Congressman Michael Capuano, who, for me, has always been one of the more interesting members of Congress, actual politicians we've interviewed, because as we've talked about, most of the time when we interview an elected official, they say as little as possible, and they essentially just recite talking points. And the conversation we were able to have in our studio at the time in Massachusetts with Congressman Capuano was really, really interesting. We talked about the Gabrielle Giffords shooting and congressional safety. We talked about campaign finance, which is a big issue and something that Bernie Sanders is talking about. So this interview is one of my favorite interviews with an elected official, and also very relevant given what's going on in this very early election season now. Let's take a look. Thrilled to have Congressman Mike Capuano, Democrat from Massachusetts, here in the studio with us. Great to see you.
Great to be here.
I don't want to focus on the past for the majority of the interview, but I'm still interested in talking with you about what happened when Scott Brown won his Senate special election. And in full disclosure, I supported you in that election. I did not support Martha Coakley. And it wasn't, part of it was ideological, but part of it was I thought you had a better chance of beating Scott Brown than Martha Coakley did. How much do you think about exactly what happened? Do you think about the narrative I'm thinking about, or do you think about it differently?
A little bit of everything, but you can replay anything 1,000 times in your head, and I look back and think of the things that I did right, the things that I did wrong. In any campaign, you learn from both.
Well, in terms of lessons learned, you said, I've never entered a race where I thought it wasn't worth losing if I lost. So, I mean, specifically from that race, what did you gain, or what did you learn?
Well, I think I gained the ability to, a true understanding of what it takes to run statewide, what it takes to raise the kind of money that you have to raise to do that, what it takes out of your own personal life. I mean, you had to travel all over the state and know it's a small state compared to many. It's a big state when you have to travel it. And so I learned that. I also learned that there are a lot of good people out there that really care about these issues. And not as many as I'd like, obviously, but so for me, I like anything else. No one gets into a race. Well, I shouldn't say no one. Very few people get into a race knowing and thinking that they would lose.
See, I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of when they have a lot of money. I think a lot of people go in knowing they will lose the election, but like you said, maybe they're winning something else in their minds.
I don't know if they're winning just ego or ego gratification. That's an incredible waste of time and other people's energy, because when you do this, it's not just you. You're asking other people to donate. You're asking other people to give their time and to give their commitment and to believe in you. And I think if you go into it thinking, I can't win, but I have a statement to make, I think that's incredibly egotistical. The idea is we're supposed to represent the views and hopes and dreams of other people, not in every detail, but in general. And if you're not ready to do that, then you really shouldn't waste their time. If you want to waste your own time, put your name on the ballot and saying, I know I can't win, but I have something to say. The rent's too high, or whatever.
Too damn high.
Whatever you want to say, that's fine.
Yeah.
But at least then you're not asking anybody else to give up, or I shouldn't say you're not asking, but at least they know what they're getting into.
Well, you mentioned it's about what other people want. And on my show, I've been talking to anybody that will listen to me about the fact that I think that increasingly the large government at the Washington, D.C. level doesn't really represent people's interests. It represents overwhelmingly corporate interests. And we've seen this. I mean, my favorite example, and my audience will be bored by this, but I'll bring it up anyway, is net neutrality, which is before the net neutrality hearings, Fred Upton from Michigan gets money from Comcast, Verizon. Yep. There's even a lobby, the NCTA, as if these companies on their own don't have enough power that will lobby for them. Imagine that. So it was we knew what the result would be. And effectively enough, Fred Upton said, I don't think we need to worry about exactly what Comcast is doing. I haven't found any aspect of government that can't or hasn't been bought or sold. And I think the people's interests are losing there.
But a lot of that's not new. And the question is, in the sense it's not just recent. It's from day one, 1776. We had a whole bunch of relatively wealthy white men running the country. They had their own special interests. And thank God, they led into where we are at the moment. So I take it from the position that, look, we know that government is never perfect. It's not going to work the way we want it on a regular basis. The question is, how many times can we get it to work the right way?
To go back, is the system best served in your sense? And I know that we can say, well, it's hard to just change the system overnight. I get that. But is the system best served by, in your case, Genzyme, Eli Lilly, Partners Healthcare,
No.
companies that have an interest in you voting a certain way.
No, absolutely not. That's why I favor public financing. I mean, I think public financing is the only way out of it, because you do need some money to get your message across. Now, I've always thought that you don't need the amount of money that some people think you do, but you do if we're running for the same office and you have a gazillion dollars. I may not need a gazillion, but I need some money to get my message out so that people will hear the differences between us. Anyway, I think until we get to the point where we really get tired of it, nothing will change. And right now, whether I like it or not, the court has said that corporations can directly influence
They're
elections.
people too.
Right. Yeah, they're people too. I haven't figured that one out still, but they did say it, and we're a land of laws, whether we like it or not on occasion.
But when you say until people get tired, the thing that I see, I mean, to go back to that net neutrality example, the people who have the control aren't going to get tired because they have the money.
Why should they? No,
but in other
them.
words, our show, if all of a sudden Comcast says, you know what, when you're streaming NBC online, it's going to look great. But when you're streaming the David Pakman show, it's gonna have to buffer, the quality won't be good. I'm going to be tired of that right away. I just have no power to influence it.
But my hope is, and I don't know this, my hope is that there will be enough people who will realize it right away. Now, they may not. And if they don't, well, then they will get the government and the service that they actually want, surprisingly enough. I totally agree with you. I think the net neutrality thing is hilarious because up until recently, we had net neutrality laws, and we're acting as if we never did.
I talked to Wendell Potter, who wrote the book Deadly Spin, former Cigna vice president of corporate communications, basically a spin expert, self-described.
Yep.
And he actually says that while there are good things in the healthcare bill that passed, his concern is it's further locking in the for-profit system by putting more people in it.
I don't disagree. But again, I don't live in the world where I can write the bill that I wanted. That's
From
not
scratch,
the bill that I wanted. When you get to vote on a bill, like anything else, you get to vote on the best bill you can get. And when you vote, I have never voted for or even against. Even things I've voted against doesn't mean that I've hated everything in the bill. There are almost all the time I vote for bills one way or the other that have either something I like or something I don't like, and that was no different. That's not. I will defend the healthcare bill as a step in the right direction. I will not defend it as my thought of what we should have done. I mean, I think we should have done a lot more.
In the last couple of minutes we have, you took some heat for this comment you made about unions. Every once in a while, you need to get out on the streets and get a little bloody when necessary. And since then, you've said maybe those weren't the right words.
One word was wrong, and I shouldn't have used it. But that's But at the same time, other than the extreme right wing who want to make something out of it, most average people understood what I was trying to say. I used the wrong word. I apologize for the use of the wrong word. But the spirit behind that comment is absolutely right. You have to fight and stand for what you believe in. And I think most people know that, and they accept that. Again, my terminology could have and should have been a little better. But most average thinking adults know exactly what I meant by that. And by the way, I wasn't calling on anybody else to bloody anyone else. I was saying what is historically accurate is that most people that have ever made progress in this world have received violence against them. The union movement, the civil rights movement, the human rights movement, the women's movement were the victims in those situations. And when they called in the Pinkertons to break up union rallies, they weren't coming to pass out flowers. And so, again, that doesn't make the term right. It just means that was the thought and the spirit behind it. I believe that most thinking neutral adults understand that and understand that, okay, I picked the wrong word in the current. If I had said this a year ago before Gabby Giffords got shot, no one would have mentioned it. But it was the wrong thing. I apologize for the use of the word, not for the spirit behind the phrase.
Well, going to the Gabby Giffords thing, I mean, I've talked to several members of Congress since that, and I asked them, are you looking over your shoulder more when you're in downtown Northampton walking around? I mean,
I guess slightly, but not that much. No, I mean, I look, politicians live a very public life. I mean, people recognize you, people know where they stand, people get very upset about whatever it is you do. But that's not new. I've been doing this a while now, and I've had people excited both for and against whatever positions I take.
Is your sense that in the future, you experienced it firsthand with the bloody comment? My concern is that everything now is being held up to this kind of false equivalency that the mainstream media likes to do, where
it's ridiculous.
On the one hand, target map from Sarah Palin. On the other hand,
and
your
plus
comment...
You didn't hear anything from the very same people criticizing me the most. 2 days after I said that, the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, had a comment that said unions have machine guns against the head of the American people. No comment. You didn't hear the extreme. The very same people criticizing me had nothing to say about that comment.
John Boehner and calling the redefinition of rape a, quote, top priority. We're seeing 10, 14, 15 attempts to repeal or defund the Obama health care bill.
Yep.
At the state level, we're seeing proposals like maybe we should enable the death penalty in the case of a miscarriage. What's behind this? I asked Congressman Neal about this, and to be honest, I'm not exactly sure even still what his position on it is. What is the source of this?
I don't know what the source of it is. I mean, in Congress, you understand, when the Republicans were in charge the last time, they love these issues that slice and dice us apart. Abortion is one of those issues that hits a very raw nerve on many, many people. I am clearly and unequivocally pro-choice, and I will stand pro-choice every day, all day.
I've had, on the Planned Parenthood issue, I recently had the owner of so-called pregnancy centers in New York, a man named Chris Slattery, and I knew that his pregnancy centers weren't even licensed medical facilities. He was arguing for defunding Planned Parenthood, and I said, well, where would the people go? Because 97% of what Planned Parenthood does is not abortion-related.
Right.
And he said, well, they could come to my pregnancy centers. And when I questioned him about, are they licensed medical facilities, he attacked me personally. He asked if I was working for Planned Parenthood. He ended up hanging up on me. So there's a lot of misinformation, but that's literally dangerous to suggest someone go to an unlicensed facility instead of Planned Parenthood, is it not?
I don't know that one. But again, there's a lot of people that have both deep philosophical positions and have personal positions that are involved in this issue. And again, I've gotten in trouble with some of my pro-choice friends because I strongly defend the people who are pro-life to demonstrate and to express their opinion. I think that's a good thing. It is a difficult issue.
Congressman Mike Capuano, Democrat from Massachusetts, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, David. Always a pleasure.